If you've been a coaster enthusiast for any significant amount of time, or a theme park aficionado, then you'll know that in the world of amusement parks, there have been several eras where companies all push towards a similar goal. One of the easiest markers of this were the coaster wars starting in the 1980s with Magnum XL 200 and finally being topped off with King Ducat in 2005. This isn't to say that new records aren't being broken, but things have significantly changed from here. I'd say that after 2005, we saw a fairly large shift. Most companies had debt up to their eyeballs and were seeing less and less returns on their largest investments. We saw parks moving on to smaller yet more unique layouts. This culminated in the 2010s with the RMC Renaissance, or the RMC-issance. This lasted up until about 2018, and now we're out of the next transitional era and beginning a new one. So what is this new era? Well, I'm going to call it the millennial era. You see, us millennials are really into a service-based market rather than a product-based market. Some amusement parks seem like they're attempting to keep the early 2000s alive, while others are attempting to dig into this newer, experience-based focus. Gone are the days where you can maximize by building the biggest and baddest coasters, hoping to attract crowds to your park. Now, you've got to tell a story to entice would-be parkgoers. Approaching this topic, I want to ask a simple question. Is this new era something that will be good or bad for amusement parks in the near future? Let's take a look at some of the major factors and find out. While not as widely recognized as the coaster wars, the period of time between 2011 and 2018 was a sure turning point in the amusement industry. It was much more subtle here, which is why I think it flew under the radar for so many individuals. The design philosophy touted by the famed Alan Schilke of Rocky Mountain Construction really put into question what roller coasters should look like. Gone were the traditional loops, corkscrews, and barrel rolls. Alan decided that track should be bent in just about any direction it can feasibly go in, and the revolutionary design of the iBox track helped him pave the way for this innovation. RMC also proved what can be done on a smaller budget, showing that some rides ought not to be completely torn down and instead given new life. To get a grasp for how industry-defining RMC and Alan Schilke were with their radical new design philosophies, all we have to do is look at Intamin design language before this era with Fahrenheit at Hershey Park. Okay, so some of this layout is not crazy typical, but let's see. You've got a couple of corkscrews, a cobra roll, a slightly unique take on a vertical loop, and a few helices and some pops of airtime. Alright, got it? Now let's take a look at Intamin post 2018 with Pantheon at Busch Gardens Williamsburg. You see what I mean? This almost doesn't even look like the same manufacturer. Just dismiss the change in track design. It still is Intamin, promise. I mean, look at Vekoma or S&S. Things changed a lot. With RMC somewhat ramping down with the retirement of company founder Fred Grubb and legendary designer Alan Schilke, it's safe to say that they've made their mark and jumped while they still had the chance. With this RMC-issance, alongside the continuing period of growth a lot of amusement parks were seeing, it's safe to say we were poised to see something new. Returning to modern times, living in a post-COVID world, it's safe to say that things have changed in a greater way than a lot of us could imagine. You don't need me to say this, but I'm going to anyway. This pandemic racked nearly every industry it could, creating supply shortages that couldn't keep up with demand. The world economy, while it wasn't amazing, was doing somewhat okay in the late 2010s. a lot of the major amusement chains were able to spread their wings with some of their biggest investments yet. Cedar Fair had rides like Fury 325, Leviathan, Steel Vengeance, and even more. Six Flags was taking a much more conservative approach, but still managed to open multiple clone rides to keep most of their parks and their coaster collections fresh. One of the biggest drivers here, in my opinion, was Universal Studios and Disney parks. With the opening of the Wizarding World at Universal Studios Orlando in 2010, and much later the opening of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, theme parks got a taste for how successful deeply immersive experiences were. I'm going to credit Universal more with the success of this, as they kept the train moving with the opening of the Jurassic World expansion, and then Nintendo World later. With the Disney chain, we had the Avengers Campus, proving that Six Flags is not alone in ruining parts of their parks with superhero IPs. Despite this, Universal found great enough success with these immersive experiences that they started working on an entirely new park dedicated to doing more of that. Pivoting a bit here, many regional parks have struggled to stay in the limelight during this time. The days where building the biggest and baddest coasters really took a nosedive, and regional amusement parks started to feel some of the hurt, especially with Six Flags parks, where visitor experience seemed to be one of their least concerns. It's almost like driving their stock price down and making themselves attractive to potential buyers was an intentional move put on by a new CEO that specializes in company mergers. But hey, that's just a theory, an amusement theory. Despite all this, I feel like regional parks are poised to find some great success in the near future. Rising entry prices of the Disney and Universal parks are likely to stretch the budgets of people who can realistically visit these parks. The cost of nearly everything has gone up lately as a result of quote-unquote greedflation, or the dying need to make a line go up constantly, sacrificing everything that brands were once known for. Amusement parks are no stranger to this, and for a lot of families out there, visiting parks like Walt Disney World is becoming one of those things you can only afford to do once in life. Regional parks have the benefit of being able to save these individuals from expensive airfares and hotels. Also, let's face it, videos trashing the new direction of Disney are a dime a dozen, and I wouldn't be surprised if new players fill in the potential void we might be seeing as a result of their slowly waning interest. I'm not going to contribute to the rest of this pile since there's enough as it stands. In fact, Universal seems poised to take the top spot. Unless Disney parks make a radical shift soon, it may be a bumpy road for them in the near future that could leave a void the size of Jupiter in this industry. So who's going to step up to fill that void? While Disney and Universal, but mostly the latter, are going to continue ranking in money like there's no tomorrow, I foresee regional amusement parks finding a new niche, and if done right, have the potential to succeed greatly. Let's just focus on the developments of the past 2 years. Parks in the Herschend family chain, like Dollywood and Silver Dollar City, have been making a larger push to be a lot more family-oriented by making heavily themed parks with rides that border on extreme while still being family-oriented. All it takes is looking at Wildwood Grove at Dollywood. This area, co-designed by a former Disney Imagineer, really puts on display what these parks are capable of. I'm still waiting for all of the trees to grow here, but progress is progress. Rather than making a massive investment in getting the biggest, fastest, tallest coaster they could, they opted to get a couple of smaller scale but still impressive family coasters from Vekoma. Big Bear Mountain really stands out as the spectacle here and, in my opinion, paints a great picture for what might come next in this park's future. Dollywood has seen continued growth since 2012, and their strategy seems to be working. Chains like Cedar Fair have been making dramatic changes in the last few years. It's easiest to see with rides like Copperhead Strike and the new Aeronautica Landing at Carowinds, Area 72 and the Adventure Port at Kings Island, and Jungle Expedition at King's Dominion. These area refurbishments with new ride introductions has seriously created new feelings at each of these parks, which paints a picture of greater focus by park leadership. Cedar Fair has always done an okay job with their theming, but these new renovations are far more immersive than we've seen in the past. In fact, I almost feel like one of the few things potentially holding back some of their appeal might be their lack of IP agreements with major brands. Having these agreements isn't the be-all end-all, but can go a great distance at attracting interest from new parkgoers. Someone might be more interested in visiting the new Star Trek land than they might be visiting a jungle adventure-themed land in the park. Obviously, the execution of these re-themes is incredibly important to their success, and IPs don't always mean instant wins. I think a key takeaway is that Cedar Fair has been seeing the successes of focusing on guest experience at their parks, and have found great returns from their parks like Kings Island, Cedar Point, and Knott's Berry Farm on this front. With the upcoming merger of Six Flags and Cedar Fair, provided it goes through, Cedar Fair will be wielding what could be either their greatest weapon or their greatest deadweight. What this chain could have in their hands is not necessarily parks that have the quality to compete with Disney or Universal, but the spread and brand recognition to grasp their own cut of the pie. This is the key reason why I believe they're keeping the Six Flags name. If you talk to any non-enthusiast about visiting theme parks, they won't even have a clue what you're talking about if you tell them you're going to a Cedar Fair park. Even if they've been to one, people generally don't know who this company is. As soon as you mention Six Flags, a lot of people will be familiar with that, even if they don't know exactly where you're going. Many of them may be able to relate going to a Six Flags park at some point in their past. In my opinion, this is what Cedar Fair needs. It is especially important that they make this transition carefully, as it could easily come crumbling down if they make too many mistakes. To add on to this, steering a ship so large could prove to be extremely difficult and make it much harder for Cedar Fair to remain nimble when it comes to adapting to the constantly evolving market. I wanted to dedicate an entire segment to the SeaWorld chain, as it feels like they're kind of off doing their own thing. Ever since the release of the massively successful documentary Blackfish, SeaWorld has had to fight hard to repair their reputation. This is where their investment strategy has differed slightly from other chains. Gone were the days of focusing purely on demonstrating poor conditions of wild animals in captivity. SeaWorld decided to swing in the completely opposite direction and attempt to become premium amusement parks with an emphasis on their wildlife-related themes. The SeaWorld-specific parks were focused on aquatic life, and the Busch Gardens parks remained focused on land-loving wildlife. Some of their experiences do have a greater emphasis on theming, but a large majority of them are more focused on providing high-intensity thrills, with the likes of Pantheon, Icebreaker, Emperor, and Iron Gwazi being key examples of this. These rides show minimal theming and are high-octane thrill machines. In the mid-2010s, it seemed like they had a greater emphasis on highly themed attractions, but nowadays it feels like there's far less investment going towards this aspect of their rides. Does this mean that the newly named United Parks and Resorts chain will be the thrill seekers chain of choice? Only time will tell, and this massive amount of investment they've been putting into their parks is something that could become unsustainable quickly. Other than the changing focuses of theme parks and their latest investments, what are some other clues showing the beginning of a new era? Well, let's take a look at some of the new rides coming in 2023 and 2024. Let's see. Wow, Vekoma sure got busy. Their family boomerang model sure seems popular. Including the ones we have coming in 2024, there's 25 new installations of these since 2020. Wow. Okay, let's look at B&M. Surely they've got huge intense coasters coming, right? Okay, so we've got a new family inverted coaster, a new family launch coaster, a couple of small-scale family wing coasters? Okay, Intamin? Well, Intamin's kind of unique here, but still, a small-scale water coaster. There are family launch straddle coasters like Arctic Rescue and Dark Coaster. How about mock rides? Well, they've always specialized in family coasters, so nothing crazy here. So yeah, the focus, at least for now, is definitely honed in on smaller, more family-friendly attractions. Beyond this, Kings Island has the upcoming Adventure Port. This is riding on the tails of the apparent success of Aeronautica Landing at Carowinds and the revamp of Fiesta Village at Knott's Berry Farm. We can't forget about the changes at Cedar Point either. This park has seen some major investment in their food offerings. I don't see this wave of change staying far from this park anytime soon. We did see their attempt at a more family-themed attraction with the Snake River Expedition. As of recently, this has been removed from their website rather quietly, which makes me wonder if it was potentially a failure. It seems like they'll need to go back to the drawing board with this attempted attraction if they want it to be successful. Other parks like Silverwood are seeing some minor additions with their Emerald Forest expansion to the water park, which shows equal promise in terms of quality and immersion. Oh, and I can't forget Universal's Epic Universe. It's probably going to be one of the most highly themed amusement parks to date, boasting 5 different intricately themed and immersive lands. This park really seals the deal for the future of this industry. One of the key takeaways here is that I don't believe a lot of this change is happening because of the economy. A lot of the investment has been shifted from building the large coasters to instead putting that money towards the areas around them. While a lot of the theming can end up being a bit less expensive than building a coaster itself, I think it goes to show where a lot of these parks have their current priorities. It really speaks to the intentionality of a lot of their different changes and additions to their parks. It's going to be difficult to thoroughly gauge how this new era might pan out for the amusement industry as a whole, but I do foresee more growth in their futures. This change comes at an incredibly dynamic time for the industry, so predicting who will win or lose is anyone's guess. One seed of small doubt I have comes from some of the drama surrounding the Six Flags and Cedar Fair merger. Many other coaster enthusiasts have posted their own takes on how this could be the end for regional amusement parks, and I'm still mostly undecided. A lot of the behind-the-scenes happenings of this merger paint a picture that may not be super great for outside investors, but benefits the former Six Flags CEO greatly. Time will tell whether or not this merger actually goes through successfully, and I still can't shake the feeling that I'm not the biggest fan of this change. I personally am never a fan of corporate conglomeration, as it rarely benefits the consumer. Alas, there really isn't anything more American than one company buying out another, so it'll be no surprise if and when it actually goes through. With all of this in mind, I foresee a couple of outcomes potentially happening here. Option 1, Cedar Fair becomes too big for its britches and has to sell off multiple smaller scale parks, which ultimately end up being run even more poorly than they were before. Option 2, with the extra market reach, Cedar Fair could gain a lot and see even larger amounts of investment towards its biggest properties. We could also see Intimidator being renamed a second time from the newly announced Thunder Striker, to something familiar, like the Flash Vertical Velocity. Heck, while we're at it, why not rename Fury 325 to something iconic and unique, like Goliath? Moving on from these, the Herschend family parks will continue doing what they're doing and become the Disneyland of the rural world. I would be surprised if a park like Dollywood wasn't able to grow into a destination park at some point and really establish itself as one of the premier theme parks to visit in the southeastern US. At the end of it all, the potential for Universal to go sky high in this industry also carries the risk of making it even more challenging for regional amusement parks to succeed. And SeaWorld, United Parks and Resorts, we'll see what they end up doing. Based on the successes of SeaWorld Orlando, I see them staying a key player for quite a while. Despite everything, this is going to be an era that caters far more to the general public than it does the enthusiast community, since it turns out that focusing on the enthusiast demographic is a really bad investment strategy. Who would have known? In all seriousness, however, I'm personally very curious about this new direction amusement parks are going in. This doesn't necessarily mean the end of larger coasters at these regional parks, but I certainly do anticipate them slowing down slightly on these installations in favor of a more catered experience overall. I know I jokingly referred to this era as the Millennial Era, but I think it would be more appropriate to call it the Immersive Era. Being driven by the rising cost of building materials, parks are finding it more beneficial to invest in smaller, more intimate experiences that really define the magic of visiting an amusement park. At least for now, amusement parks seem more interested in transporting their visitors to a new world rather than a large plot of land full of things to get their adrenaline pumping. This could prove to be an especially difficult time for the smaller, family-run amusement parks, although their growth trends could paint a more optimistic picture. Only time will tell what happens here, and it'll be interesting to see what comes next. With the advent of the new world's tallest, fastest, longest roller coaster, maybe there will be a renewed call for coaster wars, but centralized outside of the Western world. With the continuing advancement of technologies, it's likely we'll continue to see even more complex and varied ride systems, with moving track and greater emphasis on immersive theming. Speaking of, I'm so glad VR on roller coasters didn't pan out. Just give us a themed experience. That's what we all really want, right? At the end of the day, when a park displays great attention to detail when it comes to theming, it really does make the experience a lot better, at least in my opinion. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to leave a like and comment below and hit that bell icon. Special thanks to our Patreon supporters Nathan Martin and Future Collective. $1 a month helps me bring even more content to you guys, and I even have some exclusive content coming, so check it out. Check the description below to find links to the rest of our pages. Thanks for watching the video, and ride on, Coaster Maniacs.